I get that if you're making a lot of money, you might not look at the culture piece. But what I also get is in the long run, those organizations that are the most profitable are organizations where communication exists. Hey, everybody, welcome to Keep the Change. Thank you so much. We know you have a lot of choices in podcasts, don't you? I mean, a lot. Maybe you didn't know that, but I'm sure you did. And for you to pick this one means a lot to me personally, and that means we're adding value. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about what was called the Cultural Impact Scorecard. And if you know the history, I'll give you a quick little story that I got a call from a member of that I know, a gentleman I know from Maxwell Leadership. He's a gentleman by the name of John Griffin. And he told me that he had developed a partnership with a few other folks who have been on this podcast. And they are members of, on the side of a company called Legacy Leadership. And they told me about this Cultural Impact Scorecard. Now, don't hang up, because that word culture within the automobile business, most people run, but don't hang up. The Cultural Impact Scorecard was a 360 anonymous assessment given to people in various departments. Maybe it was specifically given to salespeople. Maybe it was specifically given to people in service. Maybe it was specifically given to people in the business office or body shop or parts, whatever. But it was specifically given to certain individuals. And with that, because it's anonymous, it would give us a report on 10 key characteristics. And those 10 key characteristics we're going to talk about today, but we're also going to, more than that, I want to talk about some of the results of those cultural impact scorecards and what it means for you personally. So the 10 things that we've talked about a couple of weeks ago, where I'm going to list them on the screen here. And they are, here we go. The 10 items are effective communication. Now, what that means is your team communicating. Duh. Right? What it means is, do we have some area in our business? Maybe you're a general manager, maybe you're an owner, maybe you're a partner, whatever. Do we have some areas in our business where we're really not reading our employees well? Or maybe we're reading our employees well, but we don't want to look at it. We don't want to deal with it. Another thing that is a result of using the scoreboard is finding out how you are at trust and respect within your organization. Another one is empowerment and accountability. Another one is continuous learning and development. Another one is living our values. Another one is celebration and appreciation. Another one is that your employees are seen and heard. Another one that it's a fun and positive environment. And another one that we have teamwork and collaboration. And the last one is support and care. Now, if you don't remember what we talked about a couple of weeks ago or didn't listen to it, what we said was, again, this is a 360 assessment that's given to all the employees. And it picks out the top key pieces, the high risk areas where that particular business may need to work on. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you see one on the screen. This is just an example of one that was done for a specific business. As you see on the screen, one of the areas that this particular business struggled with was continually learning and developing, or as it says on the screen, continuous learning and development. And that's kind of a big deal. That's one of them I want to really talk about today, because as someone who's been in automotive for 40 years, as someone who's really studied this industry from every angle, as someone who really looks at how do we get the best out of our people and how do we get the best performance, as someone who pours their life into developing people, I think that one's a big deal. Also, on this particular business, they scored under 40% in that particular area, which, if you want more information on the cultural scoreboard, I will tell you, I'd be glad to talk with you one-on-one. You can reach out to me, but that is not good. And that is an area with this particular business where they need help. Now, we can't talk about all 10 of them in a 35-minute podcast, but again, we can pick those areas where I've seen in my history where dealerships or small business need the most help. And in business, we get, and the car business specifically, it is a results-oriented business, aren't all of them. And yet what we see in a lot of cases is that we're more worried about the tasks, we're more worried about results than anything else, and especially at people. Because of that, there might be, if we're having some success, there might be a lag in continuous learning. And I believe that I've found that to be very true. If we don't teach, we don't grow. Another area that we've seen in automotive that has been, oh man, it's just been a problem, but it's not rare to automotive, is again, effective communication. How do we make sure that we're communicating with our people at a deep level? So what happens when we give these assessments is we sit down with the owners and we sit down with the decision makers and we go over their specific results. And then we come up with a framework on what we're going to do for the next 6 months on specific things. Again, we've only got 35 minutes, so we're not going to cover 4 or 5 items. We're going to talk about 2. And let's say those 2 are, again, effective communication and continuous learning and development. Let's talk about those. So what's a solution? What's a solution if your organization really isn't very good at communication? Now, I will tell you the scorecard with communication reveals some things, and I'm going to share that again and also read it out to you. And one of the things they talk about is that information is communicated clearly. That's one of the specific questions based on the scorecard around communication. This particular example, the communication was about 51%, which is not very good. It's in what's called the red zone, or that's a red flag zone. The next one says, I can communicate and the organization mission, values, and goals. And this particular organization was a rock star in that. They were in the yellow, which is, it's something to look at, but it's good, if not great. And they were at 82%. So it's not something that when we get together with the owners that we would focus a lot of time on. The next one, though, is I feel comfortable expressing my ideas and opinions openly. And that one in this organization is a 52.5, which means it's in red, which it's not good. The next one is team members address conflict directly, professionally, and productively. The answer to that was no. Now, here's what's going on, though. They communicate very well within themselves, and that the next question is that expectations and goals are communicated clearly by my leaders. That one was 65%. That's still a little bit of a problem, but the big problem was that they don't deal with conflict. They don't feel their opinions are important, and they certainly don't feel that there's communication around the organization. Some feedback they got was this: there's a lack of clarity from leadership. Could that be true in your dealership? Could that be true in your Chick-fil-A? Could that be costing you money? And I think we're smoking something if we don't think it is. I get that if you're making a lot of money, you might not look at the culture piece. But what I also get is, in the long run, those organizations that are the most profitable are organizations where communication exists. I don't think anybody really is doubting that, right? The next one is inconsistent instructions. Again, as somebody who's been in automotive for a long time, I think what that means to me is that I hear that all the time. That's what that means. And what I mean by that is there's opportunities for us to put a new process in place, but we're not consistent. Maybe it's a directive from the general manager, but the sales managers haven't bought in. And because of that, they're hearing mixed messages. Maybe a consultant came in and gave a great idea, and some people bought in and others didn't. And the problem with that is it's never going to stick. And the problem with that is eventually within 3 or 4 weeks, it's going to fall off. And the problem with that is anytime you and I come up with a new idea to put on the table, what's the team going to think? No, they're not going to do it anyhow. Those are red flags. How are you ever going to get a process put in place if you don't have enough communication within your organization to be consistent? The next one is poor process communication. In other words, they don't understand the process. It could be that there's a walk around done on the service lane, but it's not really held accountable to. It could be some people check tires and wipers and some people don't. It could be some people get pictures and some people don't. It could be in the sales department. Some people end up doing a guest sheet and turn it into the sales manager and others don't. What about you? Do you have hiccups in these areas? But what they did say in this particular organization is internally, peer-to-peer communication is strong. It's just peer-to leader is where communication is a challenge. Now, as a member of Maxwell Leadership, I am just blown away of the tools we have. Now, this isn't a sales pitch, but it is a value add. I've been a member of Maxwell since 2013. I do these things called boot camps where we pick a topic, and the topic is, then we pick our audience, and then we decide how long we're going to go on that topic. For example, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect is a book by John Maxwell, and it is incredible content. And what we do is we give everybody the book, and we read a chapter a week, and then we get together for a week, when I get together every week for an hour. And we go around the room talking about what that chapter was about as it relates to our particular department. If we're sales managers, we talk about what we heard in terms of communication as it relates to sales management, etc. And what we find in that book, and I love that book so much, is there's some basic communication skills, but more advanced communication skills that as we get together every week as a group, it allows us to extend and practice these communication skills. So each one of these boot camps has every week we get together, there's 10 or 15 questions we ask of the team in the room. So everybody participates, everybody gets engaged, everybody really starts communicating a little bit better. And then when we get together next week, we talk about what we accomplished last week and what our goals are for this week based on this chapter. And we're doing that for every chapter. We talk about the chapter, we ask questions about the chapter, we get people to connect about the chapter, and then we come up with things we're going to work on about that chapter. And then when we get back the next week, we review of how that chapter went. And that's been a really good topic. Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. Another book that John Maxwell wrote actually recently is The 16 Laws of Communication. I love that book too, because that book, again, we've done boot camps on that. It gives us every chapter some different content so that we can learn how to communicate better. Look, let me tell you a little bit of a story. Long time ago in a land far away, I had an incredible client. I mean, the client was a fantastic person, and he needed some help with his sales and service departments. We got together with a strategy, and what we decided to do was do a boot camp, as I just mentioned, on developing the leader within you 2.0. It was tremendous. Everybody bought in. They showed up every week. Not only did we do group coaching, but we did one-on-one coaching. And I find, especially with these cultural assessments, there's a mix of both. There's group coaching where we get together on a specific topic that we all agree on. There's one-on-one coaching for key leaders so we can drill down on their hot points for the week. And in this particular boot camp with this dealership, what we did was we did a boot camp on developing the leader within you 2.0, and we did the one-on-ones. After that, we sat down as a group. We hadn't done a culture scorecard report, and we asked ourselves, what do we need to do next? And the consensus from leadership was, I think we really need to come together as teammates. And we looked at John Maxwell's The 17 Laws of Teamwork as being a next boot camp. Within a couple months later, we let them settle down a little bit. We started a new one. And again, the people communicated well. They really worked on being good teammates. It was really powerful. Somewhere along the line, though, there was a red flag popping up. And there was some internal conflict going on. And in that internal conflict, we did an assessment. And with that internal conflict, what we realized is this organization was not communicating at all. As a matter of fact, there was backfighting. There had been some issues that happened, that a new challenge came up. So the result of that was that we all got together and we decided to really work on our communication. And we talked about what that really means. Now, you and I get that it's really important. It's really important to understand each other. If you've been around me at all, what you understand too is that I really believe in assessments. We're talking about a cultural assessment here that's anonymous and rates the culture of our business. And with the result of that, of course, this particular organization has some communication issues. And what we found with the business I'm giving you an example of, that they really worked together as leaders. They grew as leaders. They really grew in teamwork. But down the road, we saw some problems happening that were underlying, that were in communication. From that result, we decided to do a DISC behavior assessment with everybody in that leadership team. Now, the reason for that, frankly, is we wanted to see what had happened. They worked well in group, they worked well in one-on-ones, but what was happening when we weren't in the room? They liked each other okay, but what we realized was that the folks in the room didn't know how to communicate when they got stressed with each other. As a matter of fact, we did an assessment and found that the service manager was a high D personality. He wasn't very patient. He directed his people, but his people, frankly, were not liking the way he was directing them, and he wasn't listening very well. And then we did, the sales manager was a high I personality, which was great, but she had a problem too of communicating deeply, and she had a problem of listening. She would put perfume on the pig, everything was great, but she wasn't dealing with deep issues. We found out that we also did it for the salespeople, and we had salespeople that didn't like confrontation. And then we also realized that there was some of the folks, especially some of the techs, that were C personalities, where details were really important to them, and yet the people that were leading them weren't talking in the language that they understood. Does that make sense? So even though these people had grown completely in terms of leadership, they've really become a lot better. They learned how to problem solve. They learned how to manage their priorities. In terms of teamwork, they really understood the value of teamwork. But again, the underlying issue was communication. And once we realized they didn't really know how to communicate the love language of the people that they were around, we realized that was a problem. So we decided that we were going to do a workshop called Sandlot Workshop, which was just taking DISC and giving them a 2-day workshop on how DISC works. And in that communication and them understanding how different Leroy was from Susan, I got to tell you, there was a massive shift. Now, again, they already knew how to lead. They already knew how to be teammates, but they didn't know how to communicate, especially in difficult times. There's a book written, and you probably know it, called Crucial Conversations. And in Crucial Conversations, it's a workshop we do too as part of the framework for this cultural assessment. In other words, we've gone into organizations and said, let's do a workshop on Crucial Conversations, a 2-day workshop, so folks know how to talk to each other. Part of that is a DISC, of course, but also part of that is having empathy, asking questions, listening better, and really understanding when to share the intent, not to blame, but to understand. I love what Stephen Covey once said, seek first to understand. And I think that's what a lot of us tend not to do. Then to be understood. If we look at the screen, and I'll read it again on the problem with this particular business, that information is not communicated clearly, we're not checking to make sure that people that we're communicating it to really understand it. This organization, when it all came down to it, wasn't asking very good questions of each other. And they were directing, but not listening. or they were not directing at all because their personality is such that was confrontational. So when they learn to communicate better and they learn this technique, I'm going to give you right now, it's called the 3 C's, along with having DISC, along with having a knowledge of how the people communicated, it changed things dramatically and resulted in more profit. Now, they worked hard at it. Like I said, they'd been with a couple previous boot camps and they'd got better, but this one underlying thing, when we fixed communication, it changed everything. Going back, if I had done it again, I would have started with communication. And that's what I'm saying to you. But let me give you those 3 C's. The first C is connect. See, if you don't know the love language or the communication language of your person that you're communicating with, that you're never going to connect. If you're just worrying about your agenda and not theirs, and you're not empathetic, you're not going to connect. If you're angry and you're lashing out at them, you're going to turn them off and you're not going to connect. Connection is everything. John Maxwell wrote a book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And in that book, he talks about what's it really mean to connect. It's another boot camp that we've done under communication with folks. Now, the next part of the 3 C's is convey. I don't know if you know this, but we communicate in 3 ways: words, tone, and body language. In words, that's about 10% of communication. It's not what you say, right? And you can finish that sentence. It's how you say it. And what happens is the words we use are the words we use. Most people look at it as white noise anyhow, but the next 2 pieces are imperative. It's body language. If you're having a communication with somebody and you're an aggressive body language, that could indeed force the other person to withdraw. If you've got an aggressive body language, it could force the other one to want to get aggressive with you, depending on their personality type. So what's the secret? The secret initially is what we call pace. When you're in a situation where somebody is aggressive, you're going to kind of change the tone of the body language. What do I mean by that? If they're aggressive, if there's some conflict going on, you're going to try to connect with them. How do you connect? You're going to bring a calm body language demeanor to the table. And if they settle down a little bit, you're going to mirror that body language. So you're going to bring a calm body language to the table. What's that mean? You're going to sit back. You're going to breathe. You're not going to be overly aggressive. You're going to talk to them and we'll talk about tone in a second, in a calming tone. And you're going to ask questions. And some of those might be, let me get this straight. What do I need to understand? Or it might be, I'm so sorry that we're having this discussion. It's not that you did wrong. I'm sorry that we're having this discussion. Let's get it cleared up, but I'm not understanding. I'm not here to blame you. I want to understand. Tell me a little bit about what's going on. And lean back. Eventually, see, you want to initially lead that body language. You understand what I mean? Especially if you've got somebody aggressive. It's like, think about the time when you're in road rage, you're both getting out of the car going at each other. That's not going to work. You've got to take the stance of a more calm approach. Probably wouldn't get out of the car. You get it? You've all had difficult conversations. Take the stance and internally say, I want to understand. I want to get to know you. I want to understand from which place you're coming. You might say, well, Bart, that's kind of esoteric. I don't really care. Well, you don't care. You're not going to connect. If you don't care, your needs aren't going to be met. Zig Ziglar said it best. You can get anything you want if you help enough people get what they want. You got to find out what they want first and calm it down, breathe deep, then pay attention to their body language, and you're going to pace their body language. What do I mean? They cross their arms. Yeah, it's okay. Cross your arms, just casually, not aggressively, but mirror them. And then the next part of this, though, the next part is once you mirror them a bit, you're coming in and you're setting the tone, right? You're setting the tone. You're going to lead the tone with your body language, calm. And then once you mirror them a bit, after that, you mirror them. Now you're going to pace. You're going to go at the pace they are, their body language. You're going to mirror it. And then you're going to change it up. You're going to lead the body language. So you're going to lead just by completely calming the energy. You're going to pace what they're doing. In other words, mirror it. And then you're going to lead them again. Lead, pace, lead. Now, salespeople, they don't necessarily lead. They might pace somebody right away where they're paying attention to their body language and mirror and match it right away. But again, in a conflict, you want to change the state. This is an aggressive state, so you want to change the state. Does that make sense? The emotional state in the moment. Okay. So connect, do that through body language. And we talked about words, and the next one is tone. Tone. I was given a sales meeting not that long ago, and man, I was fired up. 8 o'clock in the morning, I am jacked up. And and this was a group I knew, and I started looking out the group, and everybody's got glassy eyes. And I realized my tone was so stable that and I was going so fast. It was like I was just on fire, and they couldn't keep up. So I started dropping my tone and speaking at a different pace. And they started following me. They started paying attention. They started leaning in. So connect with your words, connect with your tone. Sometimes you have to change up the tone. You have to lead the tone, just like we talked about earlier with body language. You're going to connect with it, though. You're going to come in leading, right? And then you're going to pace, and then you're going to lead again. Sometimes you don't have to lead. You can just pace, mirror them, depending on the situation you're in. So you're going to do that to connect, and then you're going to do that as you convey your message. You're going to convey your message with a confident, caring style. Do you mind if I explain to you why we did that? Would that be okay? Now, what's he or her going to say? Of course. So it's connect, convey the message, pay attention to your words, tone, and body language. And the last one is check. What's check mean? Bob, now that we've discussed that, tell me a little bit about what you got out of that and tell me what you think I said. Well, what you said was X happened and Y happened, and we're going to make sure that doesn't happen again and that you need my opinion going forward. Perfect. How can we best do that? When you have somebody check, in other words, repeat what you said, whether it's you're desking a deal, or it's maybe even a customer where you're going over their repair order with them. Bob, what did you hear that I told you, so we can make sure we're on the same page? Or it's with your kids. When you do that, when you connect with them, when you convey the message in a way they hear it, and then you check, man, now you've gotten rid of conflict. And the stuff that's on the screen about that they don't feel comfortable expressing their opinions, gone. That team members address conflict directly, gone, because you've addressed it. All right. So we've talked about that, but there's another piece today too. And if you want help with how do I communicate with my people, let me know, because I'd love to help you with that, whether it's one-on-one coaching, whether it's group coaching, whether it's both, whether it's a workshop on things I talked about. Dude, this is an important piece. Okay, next one's continuous learning. In John Maxwell's book, The 5 Levels of Leadership, he talks about the different levels of learning, the different levels of leadership. Let me say it that way. It's the different levels of leadership. And the first level of leadership is position. Now, position means I'm the boss. That's the way it is. The next level, look at it kind of like a ladder. Number 2 is permission. That means, if your followers follow you because they like you and they've given you permission to lead them, right? The third one, which you and I get in the automobile business, is production. That leader that just gets results. Now, if a leader is a production leader, but they're not a permission leader, they're hard to work with. they're probably, see above, they're probably having communication issues. Seriously. Now, a lot of times those people stay around a while because they make money, but they're hard to work with. And if people could leave, they would, and a lot of times they do. And that the fourth one, though, is the one I want to talk about and land on today, and that is people development. What are you doing to develop your people? What are you doing to help them be at that level that no other business can even understand? Now, in people development, what it says with continuous learning on the screen, but I'll read it to you. In this particular case, in this particular business, skill training or leadership development with the team is done regularly and frequently. 38%, they're not doing it. A sales meeting once a week doesn't do it. Having a check in the morning and then having the folks in the room set their tone for the day and having them text it to the manager or give it to the manager in that moment, in that 20-minute meeting, that does it. A wise man once asked, how often do you think we should do daily one-on-ones? Daily. And I know you're probably sick of that topic, but Gallup says that organizations that continuously are developing their people and they have the one-on-one coaching sessions, those organizations are more productive by 74%. Now, I don't know about you, but that's what I want to know. And yet, here's what I found, that most of the time, the reason that people don't do daily training is they don't know what to do. Hello, my name is Bart and I am your friend. I've got content for a year or longer on what to do on a daily basis if you want it. And I'll be glad to help you with that. Because sometimes you need help with a 15-minute sales meeting. Done them for 40 years, so I'm pretty good at that. Or you might say, well, I don't know, I'm a good leader, but I'm not a great one. Maybe it's develop the leader within you. Maybe we put your leaders through that. I don't know. Look, I know that these are areas that are painful. And I know that if it's a pain point for your organization, dude, we got a way to fix it. But it doesn't mean it's going to be painless. It just means that we've got a strategy in place and you've brought somebody on as a teammate to help you get there. This particular organization also said they have regular scheduled review with my leader to receive feedback and support. And the answer was no. Are you kidding? How often do you meet with your managers? The next one is resources are available that help pursue personal and career goals. My name is Bart and I'm a coach. I also developed a learning management system. Everybody's got one now, but it's got 50 videos on how to be a coach. So you can watch them and then you can be a coach yourself. And I've got over 15 videos on what DISC really is, so you understand it and coach your people on it. So your salespeople understand it and your service people understand it and people communicate with each other better. We've got these leadership boot camps we do. So there's opportunities, right? And the last one in this particular business, listen to this. My leader and I have developed an individual growth plan and are taking steps toward the outlined goals. Nobody does that. This store didn't do that. It's 21%. But what if you did do that? We were talking to a dealer just a couple of weeks ago about his team goals. And we were talking about team goals. And we were talking about team goals with the individual people. And I said, well, I think most importantly for individuals, yes, if they've been at the organization for a while, they like to know what the team goals are so they can help be part of a team. But frankly, they're also interested in getting their goals established. Because if they don't get their goals established, but the team establishes theirs and they're not making money and feeding their families, that's not going to work, is it? And part of that happens with coaching and starts with setting expectations of the people that we're coaching, but also of us. What's our expectation? Well, Bob, it's to make 30 phone calls a day. And why do we do that expectation? Now, Bob, I would ask Bob before I even tell him your expectation, what his is. Bob says, well, I want to buy a new house because we're a little cramped with 4 kids. Oh, cool. How are you going to do that? I'm not sure. Well, Bob, what if I can show you a way that you can do that? Are you willing to pay the price to do that if you can work your hours and not have to work more? Yes. Because, Bob, my expectation is if you make 30 phone calls a day and they're good calls, that you will have more success. If I can show you how to make a call and you and I can practice them on a daily basis, would you do that? Yeah. Yeah, most people don't do something because they don't know how to do it, really. I know. I'm a coach. I'll come in and train something a month ago, come back in, ask them about it. They say they know it because they heard it, but they don't know it because they can't restate it. So they don't know. So what's today? What do I want you to get out of this? I want you to step back and ask yourself, do I need to look at my organization and ask some questions on where we are with culture? Now, let me just say it again. Culture equals profit. It just does. Every organization will tell you that's the truth. Do I need to look at that? If you don't think you need to, what's an area between communication, trust and respect, accountability, maybe continuous learning, maybe living values of our organization, celebration, appreciation, seen and heard, fun and positive, teamwork, support and care? What's an area that you think you need to work on? If that's the case, hey, dude, my name is Bart, and I'm your coach, and I would love to have a conversation with you. We will have a way to get a hold of me in this podcast right at the bottom. And I'm believing that none of this is perfect, right? We grow. And then I think what I find many times is people might go through, let's say, a boot camp. They think, oh, we got it. And then they're calling me a year later and say, oh, we don't have it. Kind of like my friend I told you about they were rolling, everything was good, but their communication was awful. Until we dealt with that, we couldn't go to the next level. Where are you at? I'd be glad to help you. I'd love to have a free session with you where you and I talk about your stores. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you hanging with Keep the Change. We'll see you next time. And I look forward to that like we always do. I look forward to hanging out with you. Take care, everybody. Have a great week.